3 years wed in name only. That was the bitter reality I lived through in my last life. I wore the title of royal consort, yet I remained untouched, an unmarried maiden behind closed doors. At grand banquets, guests would snicker and hurl jabs my way. And Su Yuanhing, the man I'd been forced to marry, would just stand there cold-eyed, watching every cruel remark land. But let someone mock Lu Hao, the widowed woman he cared for, in an instant, he would step forward, fire blazing in his voice, to shield her from every sneer. I buried all my hurt deep down. I plastered a placid smile across my face, and played the part of his devoted wife to perfection, that everything crumbled the day he seized the throne. The very first order he gave was to seize my family's wealth, to send my bloodkin into distant exile. Then he personally handed me a goblet of poisoned wine. That drink burned through my veins, and I drew my final breath on the exact same hour he placed the Empress's crown upon Lu Hao's head, that when my eyes fluttered open again, there he stood right in front of me. Su Yuanhing, dressed head to toe in bright ceremonial wedding robes. My whole body locked up. My fingers snapped tight around the red silk wedding sash in my grasp, and then I hurled it hard onto the ground. I will not go through with this marriage. My words hung thick in the air. Every single person in that wedding assembly went stone still. To everyone watching, this match with Su Yuanhing had been something I'd begged and pleaded for. Nobody could fathom that I would turn my back on it, not when we were already moments away from the ceremony. That Su Yuanhing's brows crashed down hard over his eyes. Pure confusion clouded his features. Zhang Yutong, he said, his voice sharp. What game are you playing now? I ripped the heavy phoenix bridal crown off my head. It tumbled down, bouncing into the crowd of onlookers, who scrambled and jostled one another trying to catch the ornate artifact. No game, I told him plainly. I just do not wish to marry you, all of a sudden. Do you understand you are defying an imperial edict? He pressed. I understand perfectly. I know exactly what punishments await me. My tone did not waver. But Su Yuanhing, I would endure every last one of those consequences before I bind myself to you. This whole engagement had been laid down by the Grand Empress Dowager. To tear it apart on our wedding day was to slap her authority square across the face. Still, I would rather face banishment than watch my entire household walk straight into ruin for a second lifetime. That Su Yuanhing lifted one eyebrow, his expression hard. Very well, he answered. Just do not come to regret this choice. I shall never regret it. No sooner had those words left my mouth than I turned on my heel. I called for all my household servants who'd come along for the occasion, and every piece of my lavish dowry. We marched in a long, loud procession all the way back to my family's estate. My mother and father stood stunned when they saw me stride through our gates. They rushed forward, ready to fire off 100 questions. Before they could utter a single word, hot tears spilled down my cheeks. I collapsed into their open arms. Father, mother, I sobbed. I cannot marry Su Yuanhing. I clung tight to them. That embrace felt like being pulled back from the edge of death, like finding home after being lost for years. My father stroked my hair gently. What has happened? Did Su Yuanhing mistreat you? I shook my head against his shoulder. It is not that. I simply refused to wed him. I finally see the truth. I will never give my hand to a man who holds no love for me. Mother and father traded a quiet glance, then sighed, pulling me in closer. So be it, my father said softly. If you will not have him, no one shall force you. There are countless worthy men out there for you. As for the Grand Empress Dowager, mother added, we will figure out how to smooth this over. I wiped my tears away and lifted my chin. There is no need for you to bear that burden. I will go to the palace myself, and explain every bit of this to her. Word of my broken engagement raced straight to the Grand Empress Dowager's ears. Before long, her summons arrived. She ordered both Su Yuanhing and myself to appear before her in the palace throne hall, sitting inside the bumpy royal sedan chair. I knew exactly what sort of reckoning waited for me inside that palace. Even so, fear never stirred in my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel the poison searing my insides all over again. I could relive those long, torturous hours. My body throbbed in agony, trapped in a frigid dungeon. Not a single soul had come to claim my lifeless body after I drew my last breath. The second I stepped across the hall's threshold, A porcelain teacup went flying through the air. It crashed hard against my forehead. Blood trickled sluggishly down my skin, dripping onto the front of my robes. I paid the injury no mind. I dropped to my knees beside Su Yuanhing, who had already knelt before the Grand Empress Dowager. I am the one who broke this betrothal out of my own will. I spoke clearly. If punishment must fall, let it fall only upon me. The Grand Empress Dowager let out a cold, mocking sneer. Do you seek to drive me to humiliation? She snapped. I sanction this union purely out of respect for your maternal grandfather. And now you openly spit upon my decree. The fault lies with me, I conceded. I only just realized the fourth prince's heart belongs to another woman. Knowing that, I will not be the person who stands in the way of two people who care for one another. This marriage was never my wish alone. If Su Yuanhing holds no desire for it, no amount of fuss from my side can compel him to take me as his wife. I went on to lay out the plain truth. Su Yuanhing held little favor among all the imperial princes. He also commanded no powerful clan backing. He had only agreed to take me because he craved my family's political influence to boost his standing at court. That the Grand Empress Dowager's gaze shifted over to Su Yuanhing. She looked utterly surprised by what she had heard. Inside my own head I scoffed. Of course she had never suspected any of this. Back in my past life, I had only learned on our wedding night that he cherished a childhood sweetheart. He had kept himself chaste for her sake. On our wedding night, he had sat outside the bridal quarters all night long, just staring at a pair of her earrings. For 3 full years after that, he never once set foot inside my bedchamber. This time around, I would not allow myself to be used as his political tool all over again. That Su Yuanhing could not work out how I had uncovered these secrets. Shock flickered across his features, yet he fought to keep his composure intact. I have no idea what you are talking about, he insisted. That, do not pretend, I told him flatly. Years ago, your childhood sweetheart was sent into distant exile when her family fell from grace. All these years, you two have kept writing letters back and forth. Those letters sit right on the desk inside your private study. If Her Majesty does not believe my words, send attendants there to verify for themselves. The instant I mentioned those hidden letters, Su Yuanhing's mask crumbled. His whole expression shifted. The Grand Empress Dowager grasped the full situation at once. She waved me away from the throne room and ordered Su Yuanhing to stay behind. That I had barely passed through the palace gates when heavy footsteps hurried up behind me. It was Su Yuanhing. That, Zhang Yutong, he demanded. How did you find out about those letters? And why have you changed so completely all of a sudden? Are you pulling some new trick to get my attention? That stung. Everything I had done in his eyes was just a ploy to draw his notice. That I turned to face him. From this moment onward, I will chase after you no longer. There is nothing whatsoever between us. His hand shot out, wrapping tight around my wrist. Are you truly certain? I am certain. I wrenched my wrist free from his grip. I did not glance back even once as I walked away. That once that confrontation was over, Su Yuanhing and I crossed paths no more. That news of our shattered engagement spread across the entire capital in less than a single day. Gossip-hungry townsfolk twisted the story. Before long, the rumor went that Su Yuanhing had defied imperial orders just so he would not have to marry me. I became the capital's favorite laughingstock. Still, I cared not one bit. Being mocked by every citizen in the city was nothing compared to becoming Su Yuanhing's wife. I stayed safe within my family's estate. I fed the birds, tended to the fish in our ponds. For a little while, my life felt quiet, peaceful, complete. That peace did not last forever. That one day I headed outside the city walls for some sightseeing. There on the open road, I spotted a man collapsed on the ground. His body was covered from head to toe in fresh, gaping wounds. I brought him back to my mansion. My staff and I nursed his injuries for multiple days, until at last he regained consciousness. I stood beside his bed, watching him. His eyes locked onto me and would not blink. I stepped closer, lifting my hand to check how his wounds were healing. The second my hand drew near, he struck it violently away. Ouch! I yelped. I saved your life, I said to him. Is this how you repay the person who pulled you from death? Only then did he register what he had just done. He scrambled upright on the bed, face filled with remorse. I am so sorry, he muttered that I rolled my eyes and brushed the incident aside. Forget it. You have only just woken. I shall not hold this against you. I helped him settle back against the bed cushions, then sat down on a wooden stool nearby. Curiosity got the better of me. What happened to you? I asked. How did you end up hurt this badly? That was how I learned this injured man's name was Joe Ellie. He was a soldier from the Royal Barracks. His superiors had sent him out on a dangerous mission. But one of his own comrades had grown greedy for the credit Joe Ellie would earn. When Joe Ellie's guard was down, that traitor had shoved him off a steep cliff. Rage flared inside of me. That is unforgivable. I will go get justice for you right this moment. Wait, he cut me off quickly. I hold a token linked to this mission. He handed over a carefully wrapped object. Deliver this to the military camp, exactly as I tell you. I followed his instructions and delivered the token. Not long afterward, soldiers arrived at my estate to take Joe Ellie away. Right before he departed, he pressed a smooth jade pendant into my palm. Farewell. He said simply that I watched his figure vanish into the distance. Something felt off about him. He did not carry himself like an ordinary foot soldier. I wondered if I was overthinking everything. Hardly had Joe Ellie gone when an invitation showed up at my door. It came from the Chancellor's daughter. She was hosting a grand banquet for all the young nobles and noble ladies of the capital. With nothing else to occupy my time, I accepted the invitation that I never imagined I would run straight into Su Yuanhing and his childhood sweetheart Lu Hao at that gathering. Lu Hao arrived surrounded by a crowd of young ladies, dressed in magnificent ornate garments. It dawned on me in an instant why I had received that invitation out of the blue. They all wanted to watch me suffer, to witness my humiliation. I groaned silently inside my head. I never should have agreed to come. Oh look, here comes Miss Zhang, the lady whose engagement got broken off. Someone called out loud. Snickers and mocking laughter rippled through the whole assembly. I had no wish to make a spectacle of myself. I walked straight toward the quiet garden pavilion. Very few guests lingered there. I stood beside the pond, gazing down at the fish swimming beneath the water's surface. A voice sounded behind my back. I spun around. It was Lu Hao, Su Yuanhing's childhood friend. Her rich, fancy robes looked almost out of place against the garden scenery. So you are Miss Zhang, the woman who called off your engagement with Yuanhing, she said. She looked me up and down, judging every inch of my appearance. Then she spoke with total, unshakable confidence. Yuanhing would never grow fond of a woman like you. I suggest you give up any foolish hopes right now. How can you be so certain? I questioned her. Because I know him. We grew up side by side. Yuanhing despises women such as yourself. Women who spend all their days scheming and fighting within inner household quarters. I am different. Even when my family fell from power, I solved county-level cases alongside magistrates from the time I was a small child. I have cracked more cases than you have read books. Her arrogant tone pulled sharp memories from my past life. I recalled another banquet, the Chancellor's daughter's wedding feast. Back then, Lu Hao ought to have been deep in mourning for her dead husband. Yet she had turned up to that lavish celebration, draped in the most fashionable clothing of that era. I had frozen in shock, then gone to sit beside Su Yuanhing. No sooner had I seated myself than all eyes turned toward me. On our wedding night, Su Yuanhing had left me all alone in the bridal chamber. Over our 3-year-long marriage, he had never stepped foot inside my quarters. Mocking whispers drifted to my ears, growing louder and louder. I sent pleading glances toward Su Yuanhing, but he deliberately pretended he saw nothing. I tried to console myself. I told myself that was just his nature. He paid no mind to petty gossip, so naturally he would not speak up for me. But that fragile excuse shattered the second I watched Su Yuanhing act that some meddlesome guests set out to torment Lu Hao. Miss Lu Hao, they jeered. Why are you here? Should you not be mourning your late husband instead of partying? You hardly seem grief-stricken at all. Her husband had died less than 1 year after their wedding. More cruel comments followed. Word says you already had murky ties with the 4th prince before your marriage. Could it be you had your husband killed so you could be free? Lu Hao's face darkened as she was publicly humiliated. In the next heartbeat, Su Yuanhing flipped over the heavy wooden table. He planted himself in front of Lu Hao, shielding her from the crowd. I have always regarded Lu Hao as a dear friend, he boomed. If any of you keep speaking such vile words in my hearing, I shall not show mercy. Su Yuanhing led Lu Hao away from the banquet hall. He left me all alone among the crowd. I could feel the glee radiating off the onlookers. My heart turned bitter and cold. It was never that he did not care about mockery. It was only that the person being mocked had not been someone he cherished. That when that banquet ended, I headed back toward my family's estate. I crossed paths with Lu Hao as she was leaving. The pitiful look she had worn earlier was gone. Defiance burned bright in her gaze. So what if you are his wife? She spat. His heart has always belonged only to me. She reached out and grabbed my hand. I shook her off in irritation. She stumbled backward and crashed hard onto the ground. Su Yuanhing happened to witness that exact moment. No matter how I tried to explain what had truly happened, he refused to believe a single word. His disdain for me deepened even further. But if fate handed me another chance, I would never fall for her manipulative tricks again. Only you would treasure Su Yuanhing like some precious jewel, I told her. At best, you are settling for whatever scraps he tosses your way. Lu Hao grabbed for my hand once more. Instinctively, I pulled my arm away. Unexpectedly, her foot slipped. She tumbled backward, straight toward the pond. She splashed into the cold water, and her weight dragged me in right alongside her. That ice-cold water swallowed my whole body. I thrashed, fighting to stay afloat. Help! Someone is drowning! I shouted. That a loud splash echoed. Su Yuanhing had jumped into the pond. He swam right past my flailing body. He reached Lu Hao first, hauling her safely to the bank. That my eyelids grew heavy. I was gasping for air, nearly suffocating. Just then a strong, firm arm wrapped tight around my waist. It pulled me upward, breaking through to the surface. That I gasped desperately, drawing in mouthfuls of fresh air. A heavy cloak was draped across my soaking shoulders. I lifted my head and saw Zhou Eli's face. Worry was written all over his features. Are you all right? He asked. Have you been hurt? I shook my head. Off to one side stood Su Yuanhing. He held Lu Hao in his arms, every line of his body radiating deep concern. Only after he confirmed Lu Hao was safe did he finally turn his attention toward me. I turned my eyes away. I would not meet his stare. Zhou Eli, I said, please take me back to my family's mansion. Of course, he replied. That Zhou Eli swept me up horizontally into his arms and carried me off the banquet grounds. A sudden thought struck me. I lifted my head to question him. By the way, how is it that you are even here? This banquet was only open to high-born young lords and ladies. By all logic, a regular soldier stationed at the barracks like Zhou Eli ought never to have gained entry. I was assigned to stand guard over this event today, he answered. His eyes darted back and forth rapidly. His whole demeanor felt distinctly unnatural. I was about to press him for more answers. Then I became sharply aware of our situation. I was soaked to the bone, wrapped only in a borrowed cloak, cradled in his arms. A thick, quiet sense of intimacy hung between us. Neither of us said another word. Once Zhou Eli had helped me into my sedan chair, he took his leave. Broad daylight made it impossible for him to carry me all the way home in front of onlookers. That word about the pond incident spread all across the capital before the banquet even finished. Every person talked as though I had shoved Lu Hao into the water out of jealous rage. They painted Lu Hao as a helpless victim and cast me as thoroughly vicious. Fine. My reputation had already been in tatters. Now it was ruined completely. Every eligible young nobleman avoided me like a deadly plague. No one dared to associate themselves with my name. Flood disasters struck regions far from the capital. Su Yuanhing earned great merit organizing flood relief work. The emperor held a lavish celebratory banquet in his honor. Su Yuanhing had reached the proper age for marriage, so the emperor invited all the noble young ladies to attend. Everyone understood the true purpose of the feast: to find a suitable bride for Su Yuanhing. During the banquet, the empress smiled broadly. Yuanhing has come of marriageable age, she announced. Today is the perfect moment to settle his marriage. Your father and I have discussed this. The chancellor's daughter shall become your wife. The entire banquet hall fell dead silent. Nobody had foreseen this development. Not Su Yuanhing, not even the chancellor's own daughter. The chancellor's daughter froze right where she stood. Su Yuanhing quickly regained his self-possession. He stepped forward and knelt down before the imperial couple. Father, he said, my heart already belongs to another. The chancellor's daughter recovered fast. She knelt beside Su Yuanhing. She had never imagined this marriage proposal would land on her shoulders. The emperor's gaze drifted across the room, landing on me. The one you care for. Could it be the young lady of the Jiang household? Jiang Yutong. Every pair of eyes in that hall locked onto my figure. Su Yuanhing glanced my way. It is not her, he stated plainly. That he walked out into the crowd and pulled Lu Hao forward into view. Lu Hao and I grew up as children together. We have long pledged our lives to one another. I beg your majesties to grant us your blessing. Every guest's face lit up, hungry for drama. They all expected me to fly into a fit of rage. But I stayed seated in my place. My expression never shifted for even a second. This time, Su Yuanhing had genuine state merit to back his request. His wish to wed Lu Hao was granted. The chancellor's daughter was betrothed to the third prince instead. The empress proceeded to arrange matches for many more young nobles and ladies. That when it came time to speak of my future, the banquet hall went quiet once more. Every prince and nobleman kept their distance. None wanted the empress to assign me as their bride. Murmurs of mockery swelled up around me. Then Su Yuanhing, who had stayed quiet for some time, suddenly opened his mouth. In that case, why not give Miss Jiang to me as a secondary consort? He never finished his sentence. I refuse. Zhou Eli burst into the banquet hall all at once. He still wore his heavy armor. He had not even stopped to change clothing. Every head turned toward his voice. When I recognized who it was, my eyes flew wide in shock. How could Zhou Eli be here? And this was no ordinary soldier's uniform. His gear marked him as at minimum a high-ranking general. All my earlier suspicions were proven correct. He had never been a simple foot soldier. He was a commanding military officer. Zhou Eli folded his fists in the formal court salute. I was delayed by urgent matters on my journey here, he explained. Rise. The emperor told him. Zhou Eli stood upright. Yet he did not take a seat. I reject the fourth prince's proposal, he declared. Su Yuanhing's features turned dark with anger. Zhou Eli paid him no mind, and kept speaking in a loud, clear voice for every guest to hear. Jiang Yutong can only ever be my lawful, primary wife. A wave of uproar swept across the banquet room. Su Yuanhing burned with fury. Young general, he barked. Do you understand what words you are speaking? I understand perfectly, Zhou Eli replied. And I would make this plain to everyone present. Jiang Yutong is not without suitors. She waits for me. Before I marched off to war, we swore a promise. I would return safely, and then I would marry her. The nobles exchanged confused, bewildered glances. The empress directed her gaze toward me. Miss Jiang, she asked, what say you to this arrangement? I did indeed make that promise with him, I answered. When I gave my word, my mind was perfectly clear. There is no confusion within me. Truth be told, accepting his proposal under these chaotic circumstances was the wisest choice I could make for my own safety. And so my engagement to Zhou Eli was formally settled. Even after the banquet came to an end, Zhou Eli and I never got the chance to exchange a single private word. It was only when we were all leaving the palace grounds that I found my opening. I pushed through the throng of people and hurried over to his side. I could not deny how striking he looked in that military regalia. Hey, I said. You owe me an explanation. Explain what? He asked. Explain how you went from an injured ordinary soldier to a young general out of nowhere. A flicker of guilt crossed his face. He rubbed the tip of his nose awkwardly. I did deceive you about my rank, he admitted. But every part about my wounds was honest. Before he could say anything more, Su Yuanhing's voice cut sharply through the crowd. No wonder you broke off our engagement so abruptly. You have already taken up with another man, have you not? I spun around. There stood the man I detested more than anyone. He looked unusually furious. I wondered what fueled his rage. Surely it could only be because he had lost access to my family's powerful political backing. I could think of no other reason for his anger. That is exactly right, I told him. I ended our engagement because I finally saw exactly who you are. This young general is worth far more than you will ever be. With that, I paid Su Yuanhing no further attention. I took Zhou Eli's arm and walked away. Wedding plans were set for the chancellor's daughter and her new betrothed. Su Yuanhing and Lu Hao's own marriage would follow shortly afterward. Zhou Eli's formal betrothal gifts arrived at my family's estate. Every person in my household busied themselves preparing for my coming wedding. That I met Zhou Eli in private many times. Each time, he would ask me whether I was truly certain I wished to go through with this marriage. He told me I still held every right to back out, if my heart changed. Eventually, his repeated questions wore me out. I leaned forward and pressed a light kiss against his cheek. Quit asking, I told him. If I did not want this, I would never have agreed. Zhou Eli's eyelashes fluttered wildly. He turned and fled in total fluster. Then came the shocking turning point. It was Su Yuanhing's own wedding day. I could make no sense of the news that reached me. Su Yuanhing was supposed to be getting ready for his own marriage altar ceremony. Instead, he showed up outside the gates of my family's estate, dressed in full wedding robes. At first, I refused to believe the report. But when I laid eyes on him standing there, I froze solid. A crowd of curious onlookers had gathered behind him, hungry for drama. His eyes were red-rimmed. He stared straight at me with a look I had never witnessed on his face before. It was as though he had recovered something precious he had lost forever. Before anyone could react, he strode forward and pulled me tight into his embrace. His grip was so brutal, I feared my bones would crack. I am sorry, he kept repeating. I am sorry. Every bit of this is my fault. Tears trembled in his voice. Confusion swirled inside my mind. I struggled hard to break free from his hold, but his strength was far too great. I could not push him away. Just then, Lu Hao appeared. She wore her own wedding garments. Her face was ashen. Strands of her hair hung loose and disheveled. When she saw Su Yuanhing holding me, she flew forward in a fit of rage, trying to tear us apart. Yet she could not match his strength. More townsfolk gathered to watch. Embarrassment burned through me. I could hardly lift my head. Su Yuanhing, let go of me. I shouted. Zhou Eli appeared all at once. He stepped forward, grabbed Su Yuanhing, and wrenched him away from my body. With one powerful kick, he sent Su Yuanhing tumbling out of our courtyard. He planted himself firmly in front of me, shielding me. Su Yuanhing. Zhou Eli's voice rumbled with unmasked anger. What in the world do you think you are doing? Su Yuanhing scrambled back up onto his feet. What business is this of yours? He snapped. Zhang Yutong is my betrothed. Legitimate betrothal gifts have been exchanged. She belongs to me. This is none of your concern. Su Yuanhing's face darkened instantly. That cannot be, he sputtered. How can she be your fiancée? She ought to be my wife. Zhou Eli let out a cold sneer. You have not lost your memory, have you? He said. The imperial decree from the Grand Empress Dowager formally dissolved the engagement between Zhang Yutong and yourself. Go ask her yourself if you doubt my words. Lu Hao hurried over and grabbed Su Yuanhing's arm. Yuanhing, stop this, she begged. Everyone is watching. We need to leave. We must go finish our wedding. But Su Yuanhing seized hold of her arm instead. Tell me, he demanded, voice shaking. Is he lying? That engagement was supposed to be mine. Lu Hao shook under the weight of his frantic outburst. After a short moment of hesitation, she nodded. He speaks the truth. Everything clicked into place for me right then. Su Yuanhing had also been reborn. He had carried the memories of our past life, and hidden that fact from everyone. My eyes locked onto Su Yuanhing's. He tried to step toward me, but Zhou Eli blocked his path. Zhang Yutong, Su Yuanhing called out. Please come forward. I need to speak with you. If this scene dragged on, none of us would escape without scandal. I patted Zhou Eli's shoulder, signaling for him not to worry. I will only say a small number of words to him. I shall be fine. Zhou Eli hesitated, then stepped aside. Su Yuanhing drew near. Yet he kept a careful distance between us. Everyone else moved further back to give us space. I lowered my voice to a quiet whisper. Su Yuanhing, I know you retain all the memories from our past life. Su Yuanhing's eyes blew wide open. He stared at me in utter disbelief. We both got a second chance at life, I told him. But I refused to repeat every terrible mistake of the past. That is why I broke our engagement. Zhou Eli and I are betrothed now, and you are promised to Lu Hao. I know you care for her. This arrangement works for all of us. I still had no clue how Su Yuanhing had also been granted a rebirth. Even with memories of his former life, without my family's powerful support, climbing onto the throne would prove nearly impossible for him. Su Yuanhing remained trapped in stunned silence. You need to leave now, I told him. This chaos serves nobody. News of this will reach the Grand Empress Dowager very soon. I shot Zhou Eli a meaningful glance. He moved quickly, forcing Su Yuanhing out through our front gate, and slammed the heavy doors shut behind him. Zhou Eli was clearly displeased. Why would Su Yuanhing show up out of thin air like that? He asked. I have no idea, I replied, offering only a shallow, dismissive answer. I ought to have married you sooner, Zhou Eli said. Then he would not even dare to think of you. His comment pulled a genuine laugh out of me. Every heavy shadow hanging over my heart melted away. Later on, I heard word that Su Yuanhing and Lu Hao's marriage was never consummated. Even so, the engagement was never formally annulled. It was simply put on hold. My own wedding day with Zhou Eli drew steadily closer. Red silk banners hung everywhere inside my household. But right as we approached our wedding celebration, border tribes launched an invasion across our kingdom's frontier. Zhou Eli had to lead his army out to fight. I stood among crowds of ordinary townsfolk at the city gate, watching the troops march away. Sorrow clouded every face there. Everyone understood this could very well be their final goodbye to the men they loved. Zhou Eli carried the hardened, grim aura of a battle-tested warrior. Yet when his gaze fell on me, it softened into extraordinary tenderness. I shall marry you when I return, he said. Yes, I nodded back. My eyes stung. Heavy with reluctance to see him go, Zhou Eli stepped forward and wrapped me in a long embrace. Only after a good while did he pull himself away. Then he led his soldiers off toward the battlefield. Most of the townspeople had already departed. I turned to head home. Then my body froze. Down below the city wall, not far away, stood Su Yuanhing. He watched me pass by, his expression tangled and full of conflicting feelings. I paid him no attention and walked on. After Zhou Eli left for the frontier, Su Yuanhing grew more and more skillful navigating the dangerous imperial court. Armed with all his memories from his past life, he handled countless state-related matters with impressive skill. The emperor grew more and more satisfied with his performance. Still, without a mighty clan backing him, his sudden rise stirred bitter jealousy among the other princes. The third prince was the empress's own biological son. He commanded the full power of the empress's clan. Now that he had married the chancellor's daughter, his position grew more secure by the day. Behind closed doors, Su Yuanhing and the third prince fought fiercely for political power. For a stretch of time, Su Yuanhing held the upper hand, but then two major events unfolded in quick succession. Su Yuanhing's betrothal to Lu Hao was officially dissolved. Next came terrible news riding in from the frontier. Zhou Eli's army had walked straight into an enemy ambush. He had fallen into a carefully laid trap, and his life hung by the thinnest of threads. When that report reached my ears, it felt as if lightning had struck me square in the chest. I stood frozen, unable to move for a very long time. No, I whispered. I must go to him. I ignored every protest from my household staff. I rushed toward the back exit of the mansion, determined to find some form of transport to take me all the way to the border. But the instant I pushed the back door open, Su Yuanhing was standing right there in the doorway. Where do you think you are going? He demanded. That is none of your business. I shot back. Su Yuanhing let out a cold sneer. You intend to ride off in search of Zhou Eli? You have lost your senses. Do you grasp how far away that border really is? By the time you manage to arrive, his body will likely already be cold. The second those words left his mouth, my hand flew forward. I struck him hard across the face. My hand trembled from the force of the blow. His head snapped sideways. A bright red handprint bloomed across his right cheek. He touched his cheek in total disbelief. You struck me for him? I glared at him without mercy. Watch your tongue, or I shall strike you again. Su Yuanhing stared deep into my eyes. All at once he threw his head back and laughed bitterly. Very well. Then I shall tell you the truth. Originally, the court planned to send a different general on this campaign. It was my suggestion that Joe-Ellie lead the troops, and the court accepted my proposal. Everything fell into place. I had long wondered why the court had not selected a more seasoned battlefield commander instead of Joe-Ellie. Our wedding was so close at hand. Why send him out to fight? This whole assignment had been Su Yuanhing's doing that. I shoved him hard to one side. I meant to rush out the door, but he caught my wrist and held me fast. You wish to reach him? He said. Answer me this. Even if you somehow make it all the way to the border, what good could you possibly do? Do you know how to heal battle wounds? Can you fight? I spun around. I grabbed the front of his robes and pulled him down close to my face. I growled my words straight at him that, if harm comes to him, I will never let you get away with it, Su Yuanhing. A strange look crossed his face. You have fallen for him, he said. That yes, I answered without hesitation. I have. Su Yuanhing's eyes turned blank and hollowed. How could you love him? He whispered. You once swore you cared only for me. His words sounded like the cruelest joke I had ever heard. How dare you say such a thing, Su Yuanhing? I retorted. In our past life, you personally handed me that poison wine, while I lay there dying in agony from that drink. What were you busy doing? You were holding Lu Hao's hand, walking her toward the throne so she could be crowned empress. I shall never forget the burn of that poison in my veins as her coronation ceremony unfolded. Su Yuanhing shook his head. His composure completely shattered. No, he argued. That wine I handed you was not poisoned. It only held a sleeping-inducing drug. Lu Hao secretly swapped the goblet without my knowledge. Su Yuanhing, I will not believe a single word you say anymore. I pushed him away, desperate to depart. But my household servants rushed forward and blocked my path. The frontier was impossibly far away. No matter how I pleaded, they would never permit me to set off on that journey. I was confined inside the mansion, trapped in endless, torturous anxiety as I waited for further news about Joe-Ellie. Half a month dragged by. At last, a new message arrived from the frontier. Our army had won a massive victory. Joe-Ellie was alive, and he would soon be coming home. On the day of his triumphant return, I joined crowds of townsfolk waiting at the city gates. I ached with every fiber of my being to see him, to confirm with my own eyes that he was safe. Joe-Ellie's figure grew clearer in the distance. Cheers roared all around us. When he finally stood right before me, tears welled up and spilled over. I threw myself straight into his arms. You are alive, I sobbed. Do you know how terrified I was when word came you had been wounded? I know, he said softly, holding me tight. This is all my fault. I made you suffer so much worry. As Joe-Ellie and I walked back into the capital together, I thought I caught a glimpse of Su Yuanhing standing high up on the city wall. But when I looked again, he was gone. Perhaps my eyes had tricked me that because of his great victory in battle, Joe-Ellie was granted the lofty title of Grand General. The Emperor gifted him a grand official general's mansion. Now that he had safely returned, our long-delayed wedding preparations could move forward at last. But before our wedding day arrived, Su Yuanhing reappeared. It happened in the narrow back alley behind my family's estate. My servants told me he was there. At first, I wanted nothing to do with him. Yet word came that he refused to leave until I agreed to meet him. I had no choice but to go out to him. The instant we met, Su Yuanhing seized my wrist. His tone was urgent and frantic. Come away with me, he begged. Let us flee this capital. We shall travel somewhere nobody knows our names. We can start a brand new life. Su Yuanhing, I said, pulling my hand free from his grasp. I have made my position perfectly clear. The woman you love is Lu Hao. Why will you not stop clinging to me? I love you, he insisted. In our past life, I could not understand my own heart. I thought my affections belonged to Lu Hao. But it was only when I watched you die from poison that I realized I had long since fallen in love with you. All the pain I caused you was my mistake. Give me just one chance. Let us begin over again. Please. I shook my head firmly. No. Every last trace of any love I once held for you died inside me alongside that poisoned wine. It died when you issued the order to seize my family's property and send my kin into exile. All I feel for you now is hatred. Panic washed over Su Yuanhing's face. No, he gasped. That poisoned goblet. I truly never meant for you to die. Lu Hao was the one who exchanged the cups. Gone was the cold indifference he had carried for so long. So what, Su Yuanhing? I replied. Seeing you reduced like this is nothing but laughable. When I loved you, you paid me no mind. Now that my heart belongs to another, you want me back. This so-called love of yours makes my stomach turn. I turned my back on him and walked away. That my wedding day finally arrived. Red silk carpets stretched all the way from the Grand General's mansion to its main entrance. Veiled in my scarlet bridal veil, I took Zhou Eli's hand. We stepped together into his new residence. We paid our respects to heaven and earth, honored our parents, and bowed to one another as husband and wife. Standing beside Zhou Eli, I could feel both his nervousness and overwhelming joy. Quietly, he slipped his hand out from beneath his formal robe. Attendants escorted us into the bridal chamber. Once the wedding banquet drew to a close, Zhou Eli lifted my red veil from my face. In my past life, when I had wed Su Yuanhing, he had never once set foot in that bridal room. I had lifted my own veil all by myself. That night, Zhou Eli and I stayed wrapped in each other's arms, like mandarin ducks gliding peacefully across still water. Zhou Eli stayed home within the general's mansion for several days following our wedding. He took leave from court duties. During that peaceful interlude, a terrible catastrophe unfolded. Somewhere along the way, he had bribed large groups of soldiers. He marched those men straight toward the imperial palace. In the end, though, the third prince led royal troops and crushed his uprising. Su Yuanhing, together with every soldier who had joined his revolt, were captured and beheaded. Lu Hao had been dragged into the rebellion's fallout. She was exiled 1,000 miles away from the capital. When the news reached my ears, I found it hard to believe. Why had Su Yuanhing chosen open rebellion? Looking back, I realized that day he had begged me to run away with him. He had already made up his mind to stage this coup. The third prince viewed his growing influence as a deadly threat. Without enough loyal followers of his own, Su Yuanhing had gambled everything on rebellion. Such a tragic end. That was the fate waiting for him. A strange light feeling settled inside my chest. Every thread tying me to Su Yuanhing had finally been cut clean away. ## side story. From Su Yuanhing's point of view, I am the fourth prince of this realm. I ought to live a life of supreme honor and privilege. Yet who could blame me for having no powerful clan to stand behind me? I grew up deep inside the palace walls. All the other princes disliked me, and they bullied me relentlessly. Even the palace servants looked down upon my status. One day, I was being tormented once more. A young girl stepped in and saved me. Her name was Lu Hao. After that day, she would often come seek me out to spend time together. As we grew up side by side, I grew fond of her. Without warning, her father was demoted and sent to a distant outpost. Lu Hao had no choice but to follow her family into exile. Once more, I was left all alone. Before she departed, she gave me a small gift. She told me we would meet again someday. Later on, another girl entered my world. Her eyes would always follow wherever I went. I knew exactly who she was. The daughter of a high-ranking government official. She laid bare her feelings for me, but I felt nothing for her in return. Still, I refused to accept a powerless, meaningless life as a forgotten prince. So I used her. I leveraged her and her family's immense political influence to help push my path toward the throne. The moment I ascended to imperial power, I ordered my soldiers to seize her family's estates and send all her relatives into exile. I could not afford to keep a clan that posed such a threat to my rule. Even so, I could not bring myself to kill her. I handed her a goblet filled only with a sleeping potion. I never imagined Lu Hao would secretly swap that cup for true deadly poison. That word reached me that she had suddenly died. I abandoned Lu Hao at once and rushed to the prison dungeon. There she lay, her robes soaked in blood across the cold stone floor. Agony clamped tight around my heart. I could barely draw breath. I knelt down and pulled her lifeless body into my arms. Only in that horrible instant did I understand I had long since loved her. Knowing Lu Hao had swapped the cups, I gave her a cup of poison as well. A brew that brought far worse suffering. I watched Lu Hao endure its torment until she died. Even so, I felt no joy from her death. Soon after, Zhou Eli burst into that prison cell. He raised his sword and slit my throat. I died. In my final moments, I could see burning hatred shining in his eyes, but then I woke again. I had been reborn. I thought fate had handed me a chance to make amends for every wrong I had committed. I never guessed Jang Yutong also carried the memories of our past life. I watched her fall in love with the young general, Zhou Eli. Driven by pain and jealousy, I devised a scheme. I pushed for Zhou Eli to be assigned to lead a dangerous military campaign. I hoped he would never return alive. While he was gone, I tried every possible method to win Jang Yutong back to my side. Nothing worked. I could not bear to watch them build a life together. At the same time, the third prince's political maneuvers pressed harder and harder against me inside the court. I was cornered. Yishu's rebellion. If I could seize the throne, I would make Jang Yutong mine, no matter what her own wishes might be. But my revolt failed completely. Only then did I realize how critical her family's backing had been for my success in my first lifetime. I loved her deeply, yet I had understood that truth far too late.